This video is sponsored by Squarespace. More on that later. Hi friends, my name is Allie, Little Star Nerd. Welcome to today's video. Before we get into it, I want to thank my patrons. Your names are on screen. Thank you so much for your support. If you have yet to check out my Patreon, please go do so. We do fun, exclusive stuff every month, including a postcard and a sticker that gets mailed to you, plus an exclusive podcast, a video, and more. So go check it out. Great way to support me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Today, we're doing just a talking video. I do encourage you to grab a sketchbook or a snack or whatever and do some work while you listen to me talk your ear off. But if you don't know, I live in Florida, and we were just hit by Hurricane Helene. It impacted my area pretty significantly, way more than I thought. Me and mine are safe. We're all fine. We're all good. But obviously I had to work around that, and then I will be going on a trip very, very soon. So I needed to get some videos filmed in a small time frame. And so I figured a talking video would be the way to go. But I do actually really want to talk about this topic. It's something that I've wanted to talk about for a while, which is where should you be putting your money? What is worth the money? Whether you are a hobbyist, a part-timer, it's a side gig just to make some little pocket change, whether this is your full-time job or you want art to be your full-time job, I think I have some tidbits for you. You know, there's always a lot of influencing going on social media and a lot of ideals and standards, but not everything is really worth the money. You know, it's an expensive hobby. It's an expensive thing to do. Art is. Things are very, very expensive, and it's hard to know what is really worth your time, what makes a difference to spend your money on, and where should you save. I've been doing this professionally for quite a long time at this point. I've had the studio for about 6 months, and I feel like I have a bit of a perspective on where I would recommend people spend their money and where people save, and I want to share that with you. However, before we get into it, I do want to give my regular disclaimer whenever I give any sort of advice. What I'm about to say is based entirely on my experience as an artist and my experience and as a career artist, and it has been obviously a very limited and specific one. And I also have no professional education or training on business, marketing, or even art. It's all just my thoughts and opinions, and it's totally okay if you disagree with them, or, you know, you don't have to put any stock into my opinion or advice. That's up to you whether or not I'm worth listening to. Just want to say that off the bat. I'm not necessarily an authority on this topic. You might put some stock into what I have to say, but objectively, I'm just talking out of my butt here. Just want to make that clear. There are always smarter people out there than me. However, on the off chance that you do want to hear what I have to say, I have some opinions that I'm going to share. So let's get into it. Some of these are a bit broad, some are very specific. They're also in no particular order. I had some of my own that I want to talk about, and then I also opened it up on Instagram, and I kind of just wrote them down as they came to me. So it's a little all over the place. First one is a thermal printer, and I have to say, I absolutely think a thermal printer is worth it. If you are printing anything on any sort of regular basis, it is such a time saver, a money saver. Oh my God. Before I would write out all the mailing addresses by hand. Oh my God, it was torture. Once I got a thermal printer, it really changed the game. It was so much faster. I wasn't having to spend money on ink for when I did print stuff out. Obviously, the printer itself is not cheap, and then you have to continue to buy paper after that. I think in the long run, it has definitely saved me money. I think it's faster, it's more efficient. Ink is really expensive, and you're not having to buy ink. The paper pads aren't super expensive. Because I'm doing this professionally, I can definitely say it's worth it with the amount that I'm having to print labels. And of course, you can use them for other things as well. I know people use them for kind of product packaging. I think there's all sorts of uses. And if you are someone who you're finding that you're having to print something, especially labels, at least a couple of times a week, I would say it's worth the money. Next up, a really big, nice, fancy, professional easel. This is something that I think I could really take or leave depending on the scenario, but ultimately I will say, in my opinion, this is like a luxury purchase. This is you've got all the things that you need, your base is covered, you've got extra money, what are you gonna buy? Well, you have enough space to buy a nice easel, then it's worth it. But after having mine, obviously I was gifted mine, so I didn't spend the money on it, but I can say that after having it for quite a long time, I think I would be fine with just my metal foldable easel that I had before. It was cheap, it was flimsy, but it still got the job done. Obviously the one I have now is so much prettier, it makes me feel like a professional artist, it's more fun to use. I like it more, but it's really big, it takes up a lot of space, it's not very portable, it's heavy. If I didn't have the studio, I did not have the space for it. Overall, I think that this is really about an appearance thing. I think that there are cheaper, smaller, uglier options that are more worth your money. This is the kind of thing that I would say it's a luxury last on the list item. I got questions about paying for advertising as well as things like mentoring and coaching, and I lumped those together because to me they're the same thing. They're very similar, at least. My advice has always been from the very beginning, back when I started on Instagram, my advice has always always been that you should never pay for something like this. All of this stuff is something that you can do on your own, or you can learn from free resources. You know, if you pay for something like advertising, say you pay to boost an Instagram post, yeah, a lot of more people might see it, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna like it, or you'll get any engagement or any followers from it. I've seen people try this, like back in the day. I had a friend who had an account who she wanted to grow the account, and she paid to advertise a post. So many people saw it, and I think she got like 5 followers from it overall. No matter what, there's always a huge factor of luck. Always is a factor. It's always going to play a part. And just because you pay for something like advertising or mentoring doesn't mean that they can guarantee you success, because they can't guarantee that luck to you. In my opinion, paying for something like advertising or mentoring is just kind of wasting money, in my opinion. There's just no guaranteed result at all from that kind of thing, and it's something that you can do on your own, and there's always going to be that external factor that you can't control. Paying for it isn't going to guarantee it to you, and I would say save your money and just do some research. Of course, that is ultimately up to you whether or not, some people genuinely find that kind of thing helpful or motivating or a good starting point, and that might be true for you. My advice, don't bother. Hey friends, just want to interrupt to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an amazing website platform that allows creatives, freelancers, business owners, etc. to stand out online. They have everything you need to make website creation easy, fun, accessible. They're introducing Design Intelligence from Squarespace. It combines design expertise from industry leaders as well as cutting-edge AI technology that aids you in unlocking your best creative potential. Design Intelligence allows you to create a website that is really unique to you and fits all of your needs. It creates a unique website and a personal digital identity that you can use across your entire online presence. They also have Squarespace Payments, which makes managing your payments online way easier. It's really easy to get started, just a few clicks and you're getting your payments right away. It also means that it's really easy for customers to pay and complete a transaction. It allows customers to use popular payments like Klarna, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and more. Squarespace uses flexible website templates, so they have all sorts of templates with different use cases in mind, but it doesn't stop there. You can fully transform it into something that fits your exact needs, so it's really easy for anyone to create a beautiful website. Squarespace is a great option if you're looking to represent yourself online, if you need a portfolio, if you're trying to sell stuff, whatever it is, Squarespace has your back. Go check out squarespace.com for a free trial if you're interested, which you should be. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/littlestarnerd for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring. Now, let's go. Lighting. This is a question that I got a lot, and I was surprised that people had this question. I will say that there's a lot of cheap options out there. That's what I use. I use super cheap, like Amazon purchases, and they work just fine. I've made do. Is it great? No. Are they super durable? Do they last a long time? Not always. But I think that the cheap options are really great if you are anywhere from a hobbyist to starting to do this as your job kind of thing, or if you are doing it as your job. I think lights are great for a lot of things, not just for making videos, making all sorts of content, taking professional headshots or photos of your art for your portfolio, even just work with. I think lighting is a great thing to think about, but I would suggest starting cheap. Speaking of professional lighting kits that are really expensive, really bulky, that's the kind of thing that I think you should go as long as you can without having to buy those. I think you can go a really long time without ever actually needing those, and I think you'll know when you need them. I think they're not really worth it until you're really finding yourself roadblocked without them. They're very professional, nice equipment. If you can find that middle ground, that's probably worth it if you are again finding that you're roadblocked without good lighting. But I can say I've been doing this a long time, and very rarely do I use professional lighting, and I've made do. So this was one of the biggest questions that I got, and it was the nice versions or the expensive versions of art supplies. Obviously, I have not tried every cheap and expensive version of every single art supply, but even for the ones that I have, I'm not going to go down the list of each individual supply and talk about which one is and which one isn't worth it. We're going to generalize here and just talk about all art supplies. And I think that this one is the most that is up to you to decide for yourself. My general advice is try to aim for somewhere in the middle. I like to tell people the low quality supply is always going to be enough, but that's actually not always true for things like gouache. Really low quality, really $5 sets. Those don't even function like gouache. So you're really not going to be getting the gouache experience using them, and you might decide that you hate gouache when you've never actually used it. But the expensive stuff is not always that much of a difference in quality, especially for people who aren't really nerdy about art supplies or a specific art supply. As someone who is not nerdy on the technicality and specifics of art supplies, I'll try some stuff and this is the exact same as a $5, watercolor palette, in my opinion, my uneducated opinion. So generally speaking, I think that you're safe going for low to middle quality, middle expense stuff. And if you decide that you really like something or you are selling it professionally like a commission, that's when it's worth heading for the high quality, expensive stuff. If you want your art to last a long time, to be high quality, to be a professional level, then of course it's worth investing in more expensive art supplies. But if you're someone who mostly just works in your sketchbook, or you're not worried about sustainability or longevity of your art, then, there's really no need to shell out for really expensive stuff. Again, my uneducated, non-nerdy opinion, the middle to upper middle tiers of supplies are not all that different from really expensive stuff. And I also think that given enough time and practice and patience with any supply, no matter how bad or cheap it is, you can learn to adapt and make something really beautiful with it. So if you are stuck with low quality supplies, that doesn't mean that you can't make good stuff. A photo scanner. This, I will say, is very, very helpful and useful. I have not paid for one. I use my parents at home, but I know that when it comes time for me to move out, I will spend the money on my own. I think it's worth the money, unless you have very regular and easy access to a free one, like at a library, or maybe you work on a campus or something. I think it's worth getting one of your own. Whether you want to make prints or you want to archive your work before it can get ruined or old, or you want to work on your portfolio, whatever, having a scanner is a huge, huge help in that. It is so much more convenient for me to walk across my house to use a scanner, go back to my room, and, send out files to make products with. I find it really helpful and useful. I will say it's probably most helpful if you are selling products and stuff like that, producing stuff. If you are just using it for kind of personal archival use or portfolio use, you could probably survive with making a trip once a month to the library or something like that. But I use it pretty regularly. Quality art paper. I hate to say it, but yes, it's worth it. I am so cheap. And I have yet to buy myself I haven't bought myself Arches paper or anything, but I've used it a couple of times and the difference is actually insane. It's actually annoying how wonderful good paper is. I've tried my best to avoid using it, so I don't know what I'm missing out on because I don't want to spend the money on it. I will say I yearn for it constantly. I'm addicted now that I've had a taste. It's so good, and if you do shell out for it, I don't think you're going to regret it. I also got asked a lot about Cricuts and similar cutting machines, and this might be crazy, but I think that they're worth it. I don't even use mine very frequently. It's pretty infrequent use, and I don't use it for selling and producing my own stickers, except for very occasionally I will need a really small batch of something. That's the only time that I use it for that specific purpose. But I think that it really is so useful for so many things. If you are any sort of crafty person and you actually do the crafts, you don't just collect the supplies, which is fine, not judging. But if you actually do crafts frequently, there are so many things that you cannot do yourself that the Cricut helps you do. And also for kind of small batch or doing it yourself kind of things, I think it is really, really great for any sort of artist, crafty person, production of inventory, as well as for fun. If you have the money, if it's something that interests you, I don't think you'll regret buying it if you genuinely see yourself following through on using it. And coming off of that, a Cricut and also a printer together specifically to produce inventory. Is that worth it? Is that a worth of investment, or should you just use a print-on-demand service or outsource printing and then fulfill yourself? I will say that if you do anything on a larger scale, you should outsource. That's just my opinion. If you're making a small batches of things, or you don't sell very frequently, I think it might be worth investing in the printer and the Cricut to do it yourself. So if you want to do 10 to 15 stickers once a month, it might be more of a hassle for you to outsource for that. If you want to sell prints but you're only selling one or two every once in a while, it might make more sense for you to print as the order comes in. But if you want to keep an inventory for a shop and that inventory is of a significant enough size that it's not here and there, I would say it's just easier to outsource. I also think it's less expensive in the long run. Ink is really expensive. Really nice, photo paper to print your prints on is expensive. It is time consuming. If you get a lot of orders regularly, that's a lot of time and money for you to be spending on something that you could just send out for not super expensive. Square Reader, yes, absolutely. When I got mine, I'm assuming it's still the same, but when I got mine, I didn't have to buy it. It just got sent to me for free, plugged it into my phone, and then every transaction it took a cut, and that's fine with me. If you're selling in person, it's so handy to be able to make that transaction literally anywhere just by having your phone and being able to take card. I don't like giving out my Venmo or my PayPal if I don't have to. Most people don't really carry cash anymore, so just everyone has their card. So if you can just take a card, that's super, super easy. And I never really cared about the transaction fee. It never bothered me. So I would definitely say it's worth it if you're going to be doing any sort of in-person sales. Nice sketchbooks. Yes, 100,000%. You guys know I always recommend my Strathmore Mixed Media Series 500 sketchbook. I find that as someone who sketchbooks generally, obviously not right now, but generally in my art practice, sketchbooking is a huge priority for me. I have found that if I don't like the sketchbook, if I don't like the quality of the sketchbook, I drag in it, I hate spending time in it, I don't want to use it. So even if it means shelling out a little bit more on a sketchbook, if it means that the experience is better and I'm encouraged to use it, I'm enjoying using it, that's so worth it to me. If you don't sketchbook a lot, maybe it's not worth the money to you, but if you are someone who does enjoy a sketchbook, then I definitely think it's worth spending a few extra bucks to have a good quality one that will be able to handle all sorts of mediums or whatever your favorite mediums are. And you know, it's enjoyable to use and you're not fighting it constantly. I think it's definitely worth it. A nice digital art tablet. I don't do a whole lot of digital art. I've only had a few tablets in my life, but I still have an opinion. I will say this opinion mostly applies to other people who their primary medium is not digital. I'm sure digital artists will have, if you're a digital artist, ask this question to a digital artist. I'm not. If you are someone who doesn't do digital art often, don't shell out on a really nice tablet. As long as whatever tablet you're looking at is good in terms of durability, it's a reliable brand, I think they mostly all do the same. You know, they do the same thing at the end of the day. It's just a way to draw traditionally on a computer. They all do the same thing. You know, there's some really fancy ones with the giant screens and they have all sorts of buttons and different tools you can use. And in my opinion, all of that is extra. I've tested some that like have all the fancy buttons and it's almost extra work to to program the buttons and figure out what they do. I'm used to just having my keyboard in front of me, which I have to have anyways, and then, you know, looking at the screen in front of me, and I'm not constantly having to press buttons and do all of this nonsense. The really nice ones and the really basic ones, they're the same thing, just one has extra bells and whistles. Save your money, get a really basic model. You know, they're the more desirable ones with like the screen. I'm pretty sure the Wacom one, which is what I have and love, I'm pretty sure it's only like $100 something. Definitely worth the money. It's great. You've got the screen, so you're not having to but even the ones where you have the tablet and it's just a black thing and then you're looking at your computer while you draw, if that sounds weird to you, you do get used to it. I've used those before. They're fine too. My opinion is if you are not a serious digital artist, don't shell out on a really nice tablet. Get a basic model. They work just fine. A bunch of people also asked if the iPad is worth it. I have never used an iPad to draw on, except for like borrowing my friends, so I don't know if it's worth it, but I've heard a lot of people say that it is. So I'm not gonna say I'm against it. I'm not an iPad user. I have no desire to have one or get one to draw with. I like, you know, what I have, but if it appeals to you, up to you. They're expensive. I don't know. To me, they're really expensive. Going off of that, nice digital art programs. Alas, I believe they're worth the money. If you can find a free version or a very legal way to access really good ones, that's great. I've never had luck with that, except for Metabang. I forget what, like there was something about Metabang that I didn't like, and I was really glad that I moved to Photoshop, but it was a great software. But for other ones like Krita, I've always had an issue with like, I couldn't download them. They were way too laggy, stuff like that. I will say that the best programs that I've ever used, like Clip Studio and Photoshop, you have to pay for them, and I was not mad about what I was getting when I was paying for them. I'm still paying for Photoshop. I don't know why I'm saying past tense. A couple of people asked about art books, and I'm assuming you're talking about like basic like art books. Not necessarily the tutorial books, but like, you know, art collections and stuff like that. Art books are really expensive. Like they are, if you're getting them new, they are very, very expensive. My opinion, as someone who's very cheap, they're generally not worth it unless you're getting them like secondhand really, really cheaply. I have bought a very few of them new full price, and those were the ones that were like really important to me or had a huge impact on me. Like I found them very inspiring, and like those specific ones were worth the money. Like I would pay full price for like a Studio Ghibli book type of thing. But even for like my favorite artists that I do find really inspiring and special to me, like I can just Google stuff, you know what I mean? The books, they're cool to have, they're fun to have. I don't look at them super often, you know what I mean? Like it's a purposeful thing to go and look at them. So I don't know, like if you get one or two here and there and it's one that you are actually going to read or use or reference, or it's really important to you, that is, I would say that's worth it, because the one, like I'm happy that I have them, and the few that are like prized possessions to me, I do flip through them semi-frequently, but overall, you could get rid of my entire collection and it really would not impact me whatsoever. Overall, if it's not something super dirt cheap, save your money unless it's really important to you. Finally, the last one, which I actually did get some questions about, but I was going to talk about either way, and it's having your own studio space, paying for studio space, which I am doing. My rent is a little over $500 a month, and this is the only rent that I live with my parents. I'm not paying for any other major expense besides this. I have other expenses. This is the biggest one, monthly at least. I have always known that my personal dream scenario is to have a separate studio space in my home. It would be a happy medium between having a totally separate space that might be hard to juggle and having my work fully infiltrate my life. Having that little happy medium, that's what I've always dreamed of. At least since I've been dreaming of a studio, that's what it's looked like. When I got this place, I knew that it wasn't going to be perfect. I knew it wasn't going to be everything that I needed, but it was kind of the best scenario at the time. So for me, there have been things that I haven't liked about this situation. I'm pretty isolated, I'm by myself in here, and that's not super fun. Sometimes I'll find myself wanting to work from home or do something like really small task or do art at home, and I can't because everything is here, and I wish I could have like a duplicate copy of the important stuff at home, but I can't. If there's something that needs to be done like last minute, I was hoping that having the studio would help the separation of life and work, and in a lot of ways it has. A lot of ways it's been amazing. But when I've been really, really busy and it bleeds over anyways, there are times that it's like, geez, I wish I could just do this one quick task that needs to be done. It'll take me 5 minutes from home, but instead I have to drive the 15 minutes to the studio, turn all the lights on and get it all set up, and then I can do that 5-minute task just to come back home. And so it's inconvenient in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's really amazing. Having so much space to spread out and having the space that is my own, not being interrupted or talk to, like having to tell my family to be quiet while I film and just having like my own space. It's great. The separation of work and life is great. Having a room that is finally a room again and getting to decorate however I want, I love. So I think it's deciding what works for you is really personal. But if we're looking objectively at the idea of having literally no dedicated art space versus renting a studio, right? Like the question is it worth renting a studio? Those are your two options. Having barely any space squeezed in your house somewhere or renting a studio, is it worth it? I think it really depends on your situation, which is not the answer. It's not a really easy answer, but I think it really is. It's such an expense and it's a big deal that I think it's really dependent. If you've got extra money and you got nothing to do with it, go for it. Absolutely slay, amazing. Go live your dream. If you are anywhere close to a hobbyist, a part-timer, doing it as a side gig, I don't think it's worth, unless again, you have the extra money, I don't think it's worth getting a studio. It's a huge expense, and yes, there are benefits, but ultimately, I think I was fine in my room. It was annoying. It was super annoying, but that's because I was doing it as a job. If you're doing it as a job, I think if you can find a way to get yourself a separate space, rent a studio, I think it is worth it. I think having the freedom that a studio space gives you is incredible. It is, I don't regret it at all. I'm really, really glad I made this decision and I'm spending this money. It has helped me in so many ways. Was it the perfect solution for me? No, but it was a solution and it's worked and I'm really happy about it. So if you are finding that you're super, super cramped and you're doing this as a job, it's making you enough money to justify the cost, I would say go for it. If that's something you think would be beneficial for you. I'm not telling you to do it if you're like, no, I like having a corner in my room. Keep that if that works. But ultimately, because this is what I think is best, if you can just have an office in your house, just do that. I really think that's, unless you really, really, really need the separation of work and life, to an extreme, I think just having a separate room in your house that you can close the door to is enough, honestly. Yeah, I'm definitely glad I got a studio. I think I would have had a mini breakdown if I had stayed keeping my studio in my bedroom. But I also think eventually it would have been fine. You know what I mean? The world would not have ended. Maybe I would have wanted to quit or something, but I think I would have survived. But I got the studio. It's been great. It's been wonderful. I've been loving working in it. I wish it had coincided with a different time in my career. I haven't had a lot of time to do artwork in here and to use it to its fullest potential. Sometimes I do feel like I'm wasting the money or I'm not taking advantage of this opportunity enough, which is hard. I wish that, like I said, it was just a different time. I wish it had come at a different time, but it didn't. And so I want to make the most of it while I have it because it's really cool. It's really, really cool to be an artist and to have a studio space and to get to tell people that I have a studio and to come here and to see the fruits of my labor. It's super rewarding. super freeing and super fun. But yeah, that's it. Those are the things that I think are worth your money, things that I think are worth saving on. I hope that was helpful to you. And if not, I hope I at least kept you company while you did whatever it is you were doing. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day, life. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.